A bison species that is indigenous to North America is the American bison. It is one of two living species of bison, along with the European bison, and is referred to informally at times as a buffalo, a different lineage of bovine. The huge bison belt, a section of fertile grassland that stretched from Alaska to the Gulf of Mexico, is described as its historical range by 900 BC. The population was mainly concentrated in a few national parks and reserves for a long time. The species has been repeatedly reintroduced and is currently found in the wild, freely roaming in a number of areas throughout the United States, Canada, and Mexico. It has also been brought to Yakutia in Russia. A bison has a summer coat that is lighter in weight and lighter in color than its shaggy, lengthy, dark brown winter coat. In comparison to female bison, men are noticeably bigger and heavier. Wood bison typically fluctuate in size from larger to smaller, compared to plains bison. Maximum head rump lengths for men and females are 2.85 m and 3.5 m, respectively, with the tail adding another 30 to 95 centimeters. The species can grow up to 186 to 201 centimeters tall at the withers. Male weights can often range from 318 to 1,179 kilograms, and female weights can range from 360 to 640 kilograms. The grasses and sedges of the North American grasslands are what bison, which are herbivores, graze on. In a typical day, they go to a new place to graze for another 2 hours before resting and chewing cud. By the age of 2 or 3 years, sexually mature young bulls may attempt to begin mating with cows, but if more experienced bulls are present, they might not be able to compete until they are 5 years old. The American and European bison differ from one another in a variety of ways, despite their apparent similarity. Due to their less rangy form and shorter legs, which make them appear shorter at the shoulder, adult American bison are generally slightly heavier. Because of the way their necks are placed, American bison tend to graze more and browse less than their European kin. When the neck is in a neutral position, the snout of the European species is situated more forward than the forehead in comparison to the American bison. While the American bison's tail has less hair than the European bison's, the latter has a hairier torso. The European bison, as opposed to the American bison, which prefers charging, is better at fighting through the interlocking of horns similar to domestic cattle because its horns point forward across the plane of its face. Compared to European bison, American bison are easier to tame and breed more readily with domestic cattle. Although bison are native to North America and are the closest cousins of domestic cattle, Native Americans never domesticated bison. Prior to the 20th century, later attempts by Europeans to domesticate failed to achieve much. The wild and ungovernable temper of bison has been characterized. When upset, they may jump about 1.8 m in the air and run 55 to 70 kilometers per hour. Bison herds are challenging to contain due to their huge size, weight, and agility, which allows them to easily breach or demolish the majority of razor wire and other types of fencing. The best systems use huge, 6-meter fences consisting of welded steel-lined beams that are at least 1.8 meters deep in concrete. The population was estimated to be between 400,000 and 500,000 in 2010, with about 20,500 animals in 62 conservation herds and the remaining 6,400 in commercial herds. The IUCN classifies around 15,000 bison as wild, free-range animals that are not predominantly enclosed by fence. In more than a dozen nature reserves around the country, the Nature Conservancy has reintroduced bison. The Kankakee Sands Nature Preserve in Morocco, Newton County, Indiana, hosted the TNC's easternmost bison herd as of October 2016. The first treaty to be made in 150 years was signed in 2014 between U.S. tribes and Canadian First Nations to aid in the restoration of the bison. American bison inhabit plains, prairies, and river valleys. Open or somewhat open grasslands, sagebrush, semi-arid plains, and scrublands make up the typical habitat. There is historical evidence that bison once lived in some sparsely forested areas. Additionally, bison graze in mountainous or hilly regions with gentle slopes. The Henry Mountains bison herd can be found on the plains surrounding the Henry Mountains in Utah, as well as in mountain valleys of the Henry Mountains up to an altitude of 3,000 m, despite not being particularly known as high-altitude creatures. The Yellowstone Park bison herd can frequently be found at elevations above 2,400 m. Bison tracks mostly ran north and south, although a number of important east-west trails later served as railways. Some of these include the Cumberland Gap, which leads from Upper Kentucky through the Blue Ridge Mountains. A heavily traveled route continued west, crossing the Wabash River close to Vincennes, Indiana, after crossing the Ohio River at the Falls of the Ohio. The bison paved the way for the railroads to the Pacific, as Senator Thomas Hart Benton put it in praise of these wise trailblazers. Since bison migrate, in some regions their herd movements can be both directional and altitudinal. During the summer, bison roam between foraging locations on a daily basis as usual. Bison have been observed moving an average of 3 kilometers per day in Wyoming's Hayden Valley. The rut, the distribution and amount of foraging areas, seasonal vegetation changes, and the quantity of biting insects all seem to have an impact on the bison's summer ranges. Water supply and preserve size could also play a role. The majority of the time, bison graze, consuming mainly grasses and sedges. Bison mostly eat warm-season grasses when they are on shortgrass pastures. Cool-season grasses, including certain sedges, reportedly make up 79 to 96% of their diet on mixed prairie. Sedges are chosen year-round in northern and mountainous places. Additionally, bison regularly consume snow or water. Mothering herds of female bison consist of other females and their young. Around 3 years old, male offspring leave their maternal herd and either live alone or join other males in bachelor herds. It is not uncommon for male and female herds to remain separate until the breeding season, which might last from July to September. Hierarchies of dominance exist in bison herds for both males and females. The birth date of a bison affects its dominance. Early breeding season births of bison are more likely to grow to be larger and more dominating as adults. Due to the fact that dominant bison breed earlier in the season, they are able to pass on their dominance to their progeny. The older bison in a generation are more fertile than the younger ones in addition to being more dominant. In the wild, bison can live up to 15 years, and they can live up to 25 years in captivity. However, it has been documented that males and females from a hunted population in northern Canada that is also vulnerable to wolf predation survive to be 22 and 25 years old, respectively. In more open plain environments, bison mate in the late spring and summer. Bison typically congregate in more forested areas in the fall and winter. The bison engage in horning activities at this time. They touch trees, young saplings, and even utility poles with their horns. It appears that aromatic trees like cedar and pine are chosen. Horning frequently happens in the fall, when insect populations are at their peak, suggesting that it may be a kind of insect defense. Visitors to the numerous North American national parks must be aware that bison are among the most dangerous animals and will attack people if startled. They travel slowly, giving the impression that they are slower than people. However, bison have been seen running for 8 kilometers at speeds of up to 65 to 70 kilometers per hour. Since they are not startled by gunfire, bison may approach people out of curiosity. Close contacts with them, particularly attempts to touch them, can be perilous. More than 3 times as many people were hurt by bison as by bears in Yellowstone National Park between 1980 and 1999. 79 people were hurt by charging bison during this time, including bruises, abrasions, and fractured bones in addition to goring puncture wounds. Now the video has come to end. If you like it, don't hesitate to share and subscribe.